DC, welcome into the Blitz. How you doing?
I'm doing great, Martin. I love that intro. I remember that play well. Gary and I were watching that on TV. I jumped up and fractured my left hand on the ceiling fan when we scored that touchdown.
Did you stuck your hand in the ceiling fan?
I did. I did. Didn't feel it until about an hour after we won the game. Then I realized I fractured my left hand.
Was it your throwing? Was it your throwing hand?
No, it was not. I'm not a left-hander.
I'm just kidding. All right, DC. There's been some awesome conversation. Sources delivering all types of information. So I've been anticipating what DC in the Capstone Report has to say about the scrimmage. What's your breakdown takeaway from the scrimmage from what you've heard so far?
Yeah, we put our podcast up last night and reviewed the scrimmage, and it's up on our DC Capstone Report page if you want to watch that or listen to that. I mean, well, I had interesting, Martin. I had 4 different sources give me information from the scrimmage, and you know when you get 4 sources, you always get 4 different opinions. But I was really amazed that I got 4 consistent opinions of how well Jalen Hurts performed in the scrimmage, and just how great a job he did in processing what they had taught him and what he learned from the first scrimmage. And really, 3 of those reports came back that they could actually see him thinking through his progressions. There were people who were very, very tuned into the quarterback play, that wanted to coach quarterbacks before. And so they could even say that they even told me that when they watched him particularly, he was even they could see that he was dialed in to correcting himself in the middle of plays to go to his second or third progression and making some great throws. So that was my takeaway from the scrimmage. From what I've heard was the major improvement that he made between the first scrimmage and the second scrimmage. He hit some great deep balls, had some great connections. I think one of the balls traveled over 40, 50 yards in the air. Was right on target and just hit his receivers, hit his second and third receivers, and did so well. And at times, I think what they were so impressed was that he extended drives, but he extended drives with his arm instead of his legs. And so that was really impressive. And I think also some of the takeaways, not only the Jalen Hurts improvement, but that the defensive back play has gotten a little bit of a knock, and I think well-deserved because of the big plays they gave up. But overall, I think it was inconsistent with a few of the younger players. And I think Coach Saban alluded to that in his comments as well. And I think we all know defensive back play is near and dear to his heart. But I think the issues are correctable where they gave up the big plays, and that's something that Coach Saban has been working on from the beginning, talking about what will break you. And I think what happened was they lost composure, they lost their attention to what was going on, and they gave up some big plays because of that, because of not doing the fundamentals when they got tired or when they got in a situation that they relied on their old skills. It's not what they've been taught. So I think that's correctable, and so I think that was one of the kind of the bad things to take away. I think all my sources told me that they thought that Tua did a good job. Everybody expects great things from Tua, but he looked normal in this scrimmage, like a normal quarterback. Made some poor decisions. He got sacked, 5 or 6 times. One guy had 7 times. One guy had 6 times, and so he got sacked 5 or 6 times, and not necessarily all because of the defensive line play, because he held the ball so long trying to find the open receiver and didn't make the correct read. There were some people open, but didn't make the correct read on those throws. Threw some wobbly balls, threw some wounded duck passes. We just wasn't sharp. So he had just a normal game. And a normal game for Tua is great for most quarterbacks. So I think that coming away, it wasn't that he was bad, but it was just a normal scrimmage for him.
That's what I told someone. I said Tua looked human. It was the first time I saw any chink in Superman's armor where he just wasn't lights out from start to finish. Of course, as I said yesterday, and I'll say again today, he ended the scrimmage back on point, vintage Tua, and made a couple of passes. Even though they were situational-based football, that red zone pass he threw to Keith, I think it was Ryan Fowler. I was telling him, I said, Ryan, if one of the guys had an inch-long fingernail, it would have broke. the DBs, I mean, literally, it was probably between the two hands, it was probably an inch on each side that it went through. I mean,
yeah, I heard some great things about that last play. That was so dialed in. One of my sources told me, and I hate to even throw this out there. He said he didn't think another quarterback, maybe Brett Favre, could have put it. It would even have tried to put it
right.
in that window that Tua did, and capable of doing that, and he did great. I think the play that everybody was concerned about was it didn't start well. It came out.
Right.
I think to a couple of my sources said that it was like three and outs, and that's not how you're going to win ball games. You got to. Alabama is going to have to rely on their offense this year to have long, sustained drives that takes time off the clock, so that the young defense is not challenged as much and is not pressured as much down to make stops and that sort of thing with time. You know, we saw that with Clemson when our defense was gassed with Clemson. They just pour us right around the field. We're not going to win many games like that because we can't tire our offense out so much by making those quick strikes, tire our defense out by making the quick strikes and having to come in. We're going to have some explosive plays. We got the players to do it with. We got probably one of the best offenses we've ever had, and I don't care which quarterback goes out there and plays with the running backs we've got and the offensive line. And we don't talk enough about our tight ends. We have inhaled hinges. I heard some of the plays that he made in the blocking assignments. You know, none of those sacks were his fault. I can tell you that much from what I heard from Scrimmage.
All right, we're speaking with DC Capstone Report, presented by freelancepictures.com and rolltidebama.com. Check them out for great Bama stuff as well as some great photography. But, DC, as we continue, got a question from C.J. Watson regarding the offensive line. He says the offensive line change that sent Leatherwood to a right guard from right tackle, that was just some experimentation, according to Saban, has gone back since the middle of last week. Do you think it will stick that way? How do you think that O-line lineup look compared to Leatherwood at right tackle? Did your sources give you any indication of even though there was some times that offensive line broke down, did they give you any indication of how this unit looks and how they could progress?
Yeah, I think offensive line got a bad rap because of the sacks, but I'm gonna tell you that we give the defensive backs a bad rap. Let's give them a little help in this. A lot of those sacks were coverage sacks. They actually held their man 4 to 6 to 8 seconds and without being open. So some of those were coverage sacks. All of it wasn't the offensive line's fault. But let's draw back from a big picture here. My friend Gary Shores, who is the reason we do the Capstone Report, he would be remiss if I didn't tell you that as a former offensive lineman, he always told me, David, the offensive line is not going to be really fully ready and gelled to the second or third game of the season. And I think that's kind of where we're just in the second scrimmage of the season, and we're still making adjustments, and we're still having putting people in different places. And so overall, the offensive line play, I think it's scary, but it's when you see all these sacks and the way they did. But remember two things: a lot of them was coverage sacks. They're playing against one of the three of the best defensive front linemen Alabama's ever had. I know that it's going out on the limb because of the great ones we've had, but I can talk to them later. But they are really good, and they are moving some experimental things. But I think they had an injury to Matt Womack. I think they wanted to check and give Jedrick Will some time at tackle to get him some more reps in practice. And I think that's been a good experience. But Saban has always said, and we always know, he wants to get the best 5 players on the field at the same time for the offensive line. And I think that's what he's trying to do, is try to find his best 5 players and trying to find a unit that works and gels together. Now, Leatherwood has the ability to play guard and give you an uptick there when he's teamed with Jedrick Wills. They do gel together, do play well together on that side. So some of my sources said that that may not just be an experiment. It may be something that we see going into the season, and that right side performed pretty well under the pressure they were receiving on that scrimmage.
All right, let's get right back into the conversation with DC and the Capstone Report. DC, before we get into, I know we want to highlight a couple of the players, but Virgil Williams had a question for you. DC, I had sources tell me that this scrimmage was as close to game-like as possible with play calling and lack of coaching on the field like in practice. Was this what you heard as well? I think that helps us understand if the players are grasping what's being implemented in the offensive and defensive schemes. What's your thoughts on that question, DC?
No, yeah, my sources are exactly told me the same thing that he saw or he heard. Actually, it was a setup for a game time simulation. In other words, these long passes that Jalen had and these touchdown passes were not some setup in a 10-yard window red zone. They did some of that at the very end, but this was more of a game time setup than any other scrimmage they've had. And that's always, if you look at Coach Saban's process for the last 12 years, that's always in his process. You study his second scrimmage ending fall camp is going to be the most game simulation he can get, because that's what he's going to concentrate on. That's his whole idea for that particular scrimmage. That's his agenda. Coming into the next week, we're talking next week game week, so we're putting in stuff this week and next week for the Louisville game. So that scrimmage was the best opportunity for him to do a game time simulation, and everything within it was like that. It was less coaching on the field. It was you had to know what you were doing and had to know and making your own decisions. That's why there were so many breakdowns in the defensive backfield. Coach Saban was not back there putting him in the right position. They had to get in the right position on themselves. So that's even more impressive as to what Jalen was able to do because it was such a game-time simulation as well.
All right. Once again, we're speaking with DC in the Capstone Report, presented by RollTopBama.com and FreelancePictures.com. DC, we talked about last week a young man that was making all types of turning heads in camp is the easy way to say it. So I know he's one of the players we want to highlight. So talk a little bit about Jalen Waddell, and then any other player that you saw that was a standout from this Saturday scrimmage, or maybe even in camp and not necessarily in the scrimmage.
Yeah, we highlighted several players on our podcast, but definitely Jalen Waddell was one of them. I'm telling you, when you see that young man, Martin, and I'm just going to tell you, he jumps off the field. You heard things jumping off the page and just hitting you. Yeah. He jumps off the field as a player who has it, and it's hard to find a player that young that has it. But he has the skill set, and he has the quickness and the speed. Two different things there. You got some folks that are got that first step quick off the off the line.
Yeah, like I had the quickness. I didn't have the speed. Well, why you laughing?
You got some wide receivers that have that quick step off the line, can shake that first defender and catch that ball, but then they get run down. This young man has the quick step to get open, and he has the speed to turn it on. I don't think he's going to be run down by anyone. I was impressed, or my sources were impressed with not only his wide receiver play, but I believe that he is going to be worked into our special teams return game. He may be one of the most explosive return guys that we've had in quite some time, and that comes with maybe him. It also comes with our new special teams coach, and Jeff Banks, that we also highlight on our podcast. I think probably one of the most underestimated, underrated hires that Coach Saban has made. He went out and got the best, not only the best recruiter in that area of Texas, but the best special teams guys you can get. That was translated in seeing some of the things that are going on with the return game. I'm really excited about the return game, and Jalen Waddle is the reason. I think that young man, I'm going to go out on a limb. We got some super sophomores coming back with Devontae Smith and Henry Ruggs III and Jerry Jeudy, and they've all stepped up their game. But you know why they stepped up their game? They stepped up their game because they're the freshmen that's really biting at their heels, wanting some playing time. And I don't see any way, barring an injury, that he's going to be kept off the field this year. And I think your listeners out there and the fans of Alabama football are going to be excited every time he touches the ball.
Yeah, this young man has the potential to not just break into some playing time. If they slip up and don't do their job, he'll also be fighting for running out there with the first unit. I'm going to tell you another guy I was impressed with, and we're not talking a lot about him, I think, just because Waddell is having such a great camp. But Terrell Shaver seems to have upped his game and is ready to contribute. And he's kind of the outlier when it comes to our receiving core, the big, tall guy, and I think we're going to need him.
Well, I have been high on Terrell Shaver. You remember one of the early shows that I did with you, Martin, I highlighted some people I think is going to step up this year, and he was one of the ones I highlighted then, and I have not changed that opinion at all. he has been under the radar because of the play of Jalen Waddell and other super sophomores. But when you look at him, I think he is going to feel that one thing that we've never had, and that is a person who can come in and help us contend for that 50-50 ball. And I believe either one of our quarterbacks down on the line of scrimmage, getting in the red zone with those fades and into the end zone, they're going to have a great, large receiver. And I liken him to Harold Carmichael. And I know it goes back a lot of time for your listeners with the Philadelphia Eagles, but he has got such a long body, but then he add his arms to it. It almost gives him a whole another 6-foot length because of his arms are so long.
Right.
And he goes up and really, really has been able to tower over some of the defensive backs and contend for those 50-50 balls. And we saw some Clemson receivers do that against us in that national championship game when they beat us on that final drive there that won the game for them. I think that Terrell Shavers could be a difference maker in some ball games down the line this year.
Other than the wide receiver group, what other group of players did you see or have you heard that made a little bit of noise and a name for themselves in the first part of camp?
Well, I think anytime Coach Saban singles out anybody in one of his news conferences, he does it for a reason. And I think it was a reason to give them some encouragement, but it was also calling out the other defensive backs. When he singled out Trayvon Diggs and Xavier McKinney as two of the guys he thought he could pencil in right now as starting roles, not sure about anybody else, I believe that he was setting the stage there to say that these two guys are playing consistently, and they're going to be able to step up. They have stepped their game up this time. I think Trayvon Diggs has been a really solid person back there to help the young guys through the process. And Xavier McKinney has really surprised everybody and really stepped up his game. Now, we thought Deontay Thompson would be the one, but I look when they start the defensive backfield, I look for Deontay Thompson and Xavier McKinney to be playing at safety. I'm looking for Trayvon Diggs and Savion Smith to be one of the corners. And a guy that I'm really high on that all my sources have told me have really stepped up is that 5-star defensive back, Patrick Surtain Jr. I look for him to come in and be like that Minka Fitzpatrick role, fill that role as Minka Field as a freshman playing anywhere, but maybe playing in that in his first game, especially against the Bobby Petrino wide open offense, playing in that dime package as a star money and be able to move back and forth between those positions. He's really impressed. The younger guys in the defensive backfield come in and have a hard time grasping Coach Saban's intricate defenses. But you can see that Patrick Surtain Jr. has been in all the camps, has been in all the tutelage, has been able to grasp that process. That's not been a stumbling block for him. And therefore, he's been able to go on and his talent to be able to shine on the field without thinking about what he's doing. So I think he's going to really step up. On offense, other than the wide receivers, our tight ends are probably going to be one of our biggest pluses this year, especially in blocking schemes. Held Hinges has really done a great job this year. He's somebody I like to highlight. On the running game, which I think we're going to rely on our running game more than our passing game. I know I'm probably the outlier in that, but with our young defense, I'm thinking we're going to need to run the ball. If I'm old school, I'm an old Bear Bryant guy who believes that when you throw the ball, three things can happen, and two of them are bad. So I want to run the ball, and so I think we can do that and help our defense. So our offensive backs are really going to have a good year this year, I think, behind that offensive line and our tight end. So I look forward to seeing that offense go on the field and running the ball this year.
Yeah, speaking of the DBs, Patrick Surtain was running with the first five at that star position. Shy Carter, I think, kind of flipped in and out. Let me ask you a question, DC, as we wrap up this time with you for the DC Capstone Report. The outside linebackers have gone down. And, of course, you lost two guys that you expected to contribute. You got Latu, you got Anoma, you have Parks, but there's this fourth guy, Ben Davis. Will he step up and step into this opportunity? And have you heard, is it his talent? Is it his attitude? What are you hearing what's holding Ben Davis back from potentially stepping in, and will he take advantage of this opportunity?
Well, I hope he does. I love Ben Davis. I love his dad. When he plays Alabama, he played probably one of the best linebackers, holds all the records at Alabama. I loved him when he came out of Gordo. I have nothing but love for the young man. I want him to do well. But my sources tell me, and I got an inside source who I trust with everything, that it's not his talent, it's not his ability, but Ben Davis early on is just not caught on to the way that Coach Saban loves for his linebackers to practice. There's been a couple of incidents where that is just not his toughness is not translated in practice, and I think he is. I think I have it from a very reliable source that says that he was told you get the back of the line and you can get out of the back of the line when you learn how to practice the way I want you to practice.
So it's as much attitude and effort as anything from what you're hearing?
I don't think it's attitude. I think he's very. I don't think it's attitude. I think it's more toughness and effort. I think Coach Saban, and you can fault him for this, but in practice, he wants you to push you as hard as you can to see who quits on him in practice, and so you don't quit on him in the game. And I believe most of the linebackers who fill the hole, they pop that back and hit them hard and lay them out during those practices to show that they want to make it and show they want to do. And I think that's not been his. That's not the way he was brought up in the play-in style, and that's not the way that he's. It's more of a push and grab and hold up and stop them and get them down instead of hitting. And I think once he gets that aggressive nature back into him, where that Coach Saban wants him, you might see him progress. But this is the best time for him to step up. If there ever been a time, this is Ben Davis's time. So he has the talent. I'm high on the kid. I want to see him. I know all my podcast listeners ask me about Ben Davis. It's got to be a little fun. They ask me, hey, what about Ben Davis? Well, I want to see him, and I hope that he uses his time wisely and step up in practice and play the way that Coach Saban wants him to, so he can get out of the back of that line. And I've seen some in progress. Some of my sources have told me that he wasn't the last guy in line. He was like the third in line the last time after Chris Allen went down. So I'm seeing some progress there, and he's making progress.
All right. One last question. Bubba Curry ask DC who he thinks will start at quarterback. So DC, you got about 30 seconds to throw your neck out there, and I'm just kidding.
Well, I'm gonna throw my neck out there on the line. I'm gonna tell you this. If I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But here it is. I think you're going to see both in the Louisville game. You're going to see both Tua and Jalen start on the first series. You're going to see them both start, barring anything else that happens between now and the first game. And they're going to both play. And Jalen Hurts and Tua are both in no-win situations this year. Okay,
right.
I just go put that on no-win situation. Tua will have to win every game and go undefeated and win the national championship to be the person that everybody wants him to be. Jalen will have to throw 375 yards a game, no interception, and win the national championship, go undefeated to do what he wants to do. They're both in no-win situations.
Right. All right, that's DC in the Capstone Report. You can find DC's Capstone Report in its entirety on Facebook at DC Capstone page. DC Capstone Report presented by RollTideBama.com and FreelancePictures.com. DC, thanks for spending a little time with us. We will catch up with you. Hey, get your game face on because next week is game week, and we look forward to catching up with you.
We are going to look at game week next week. And also, Mark, we have our own new website, dccapstonereport.com. Lance has got some great content. If you're getting ready for the season, Lance has got some great videos. Check them out this week.